Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready?
Introduction. The central concept is that certain flaws or abnormalities in an individual biology, such as genetic, brain structure, or even physical characteristic, may contribute to their likelihood of engaging in criminal activities.
Biological criminology suggests that crime behavior might be linked to biological factors. These factors include: number 1, heredity. It implies that your genetics may play a role in criminal behavior. 2, neurotransmitter. This function issue with brain chemicals called influence criminal tendency. 3. Brain abnormalities. This could result from genetics, improper development, or trauma. In the olden days, people had some curious theory about crime. The philosopher Jacob Fries also just suggested a link between crime and physical appearance when he published a criminal anthropology handbook in 1820. This theory connected facial features to criminal behavior.
Moving into modern biological theories on crime.
This involved reading bumps on the head to determine criminal tendency, not very scientific. Positivist theory. Cesar Lombroso was the first to connect crime to human evaluation. Criminals were atavistic or throwbacks to an earlier, more primitive stage of human development. Lombroso thought some people were born criminals due to primitive traits. Two studies related to criminal anthropology of Lombroso. Charles Goring in 1913, Goring reported a fairly sophisticated study of 3,000 prisoners with a history of long and frequent sentence and apparently not criminals. Another studies related to criminal anthropology of Lombroso. Ernest Houghton, in his Crime and the Man in 1939, about his study of 14,000 prisoners and 3,000 non-prisoners, it showed that there is a link between criminality to organic inferiority. He supported the notion of born criminals by Lombroso, but linked it to biological inferiority. Basic theory. Different body types were associated with different crime. Skinny folks were supposedly into petty theft. Somatotype theory. Sheldon related body types to personality. For example, muscular folks were seen as assertive. The three somatotypes by Sheldon: endomorphic, mesomorphic, and entomorphic. Sheldon's study revealed that a predisposition towards criminality might be influenced by somatotype, high in endomorphy, and intermediate in mesomorphy. In contrast, is predisposition towards suicidality might be influenced by somatotype, high in enormopy, and entomorphy is more common in mental institutions. The theory of XYY chromosome imbalance theory. The human chromosome is the basic building block of life and is one of the most important components of the cell to be transmitted from generation to generation. There's also the intriguing XYY chromosome theory, suggesting at XY chromosome might lead to more aggression. In a nutshell, biological criminology explored the idea that biology might have a say in why some people turn to crime. It's a mix of science and some pretty quirky historical ideas. Types of sex chromosome. XX chromosomes in refers to female chromosomes. XY chromosomes, it refers to male chromosomes. XYY chromosome, the extra Y chromosome equates aggressive behavior and masculinity.
Birth of Criminalistics, Hans Gross, an Australian criminal jurist who wrote the handbook for coroners, police officials, military policemen in 1893, and is generally acknowledged as the birth of fear of the field of criminalistics. The work combined in one system tools of knowledge that had not been previously integrated, such as psychology and physical science, and which could be successfully used against crime. Gross adapted some fields to the needs of criminal investigation, such as crime scene photography. He went on to found the Institute of Criminalistics in 1912 as part of the University of Graz Law School. This institute was followed by many similar institutes all over the world. Doctor Edmond Locard became known as the Sherlock Holmes of France. He formulated the basic principle of forensic science. Every contract leaves a trace, which became known as Locard's exchange principle. In 1910, he found what may have been the first criminal laboratory in the world, after persuading the police department of Lyon to give him two assistants. Symbolic of the newfound prestige of forensic and the use of reasoning in detective work was the popularity of the functional character Sherlock Holmes, written by Arthur Conan Doyle in the late 19th century. He made great use of trace evidence such as shoe and tire impressions, as well as fingerprints, ballistic and handwriting analysis, now known as questionnaire document examination. Holmes used analytical chemistry for blood residue analysis as well as toxicology examination and determination for poisons. He ballistic by measure bullet calibers and matching them with a suspected murder weapon.
Biological family studies on crime. Duke's family tree, the study of Richard Dugdale in the late 19th and early 20th century view of presented the concept of degeneracy, wholly synonymous with hard heredity, that leads jurists to conceive that social problems are caused by the following factors: insanity, poverty, intemperance, criminality, idiocy. This view was expanded in the Duke's study of crime, favoritism, disease, and heredity. The Dugdale in 1875, who studied the family of Margaret. At the Duke, this study was about a rural clan that over 7 generations produced 1,200 bastards, beggars, murderers, prostitutes, thieves, and syphilitics. The following are Dugdale's findings based from the Duke's family studies. 310 dead as paupers, 150 were criminals, 7 were murderers, 100 were drunkards, and more than half of the women were prostitutes. The Duke's family refers to a study conducted in the 19th and 20th century. Richard Dugdale, he traced the lineage of a family known as the jokes examining the descendants' social and moral conditions. Over several generations, the study aims to investigate the impact of hereditary factors on crime poverty. Tactile asserted that the negative traits he observed within the Jocks family, such as criminality, poverty, and intemperance, were the result of hereditary influences. It is important to note that Douglas the study has been heavily criticized over the years, primarily for its biases and lack of scientific rigor. Kalakikak Family Tree. This is the study was made possible by Henry H. Goddard, a prominent American psychologist and eugenicist in the early 20th century, and was known especially of his 1912 work The Kalakikak Family, a study in the heredity of feeble-mindedness. Goddard developed the pseudonym Kalikak by combining a Greek, the, the root meaning beauty, kalos, with the meaning bad, kakus. He also introduced the term moron Goddard to study trace back six generations of the family. For 80 members of a young institutionalized woman and found an appalling amount of detectiveness, yet was also information about a good family of the same name. It emerged that the forebear met a feeble-minded girl by whom he became the father of a feeble-minded son. Subsequently, the father married a respectable girl of good family by whom he produced children with a marked tendency towards professional career, whose emerged in the best family singers of the Declarations of Independence. The lesson was clear and dramatic. The study linked medical and moral deviance, the fused the new Mendelian laws with the old biblical injections that the sins of the father should be visited on the sons. The Kalikak family tree, a study conducted by Richard Dugdale in the early 20th century, analyzed the hereditary influence on social and moral conditions. Critics argue it had a flawed methodology, biases, and lack of scientific rigor, as the modern scientific understanding considers factors beyond genetics such as social circumstances and individual experiences. Jonathan Edwards' family tree, based on the study Edwards was a famous preacher during the colonial period when his family tree was traced and the descendants was found to criminal. The Edwards family tree research findings as follows. Practical no lawbreakers, more than 100 become lawyers and 30 become judges. Two were the 13 college presidents and 100 and more professors. 60 were physicians, 100 were clergymen, missionaries, and theological professors. 80 were elected to public office, including 3 mayors, 3 governors, several members of Congress, 3 senators, and 1 vice president. 6 have attained the prominence of authorship or editorial life, with 135 books of births and 5 become an army or navy officers. The research on Jonathan Edwards' family tree reveals a strong moral foundation with criminal activities among the descendants. Over 100 descendants pursues careers in law, with the 30 become judges. The family also had a strong academic lineage, and over 100 as the professor. The majority of the family members become physicians, and the numbers of clergymen, the missionaries, and the theological professor extended. 100 The family also held the various public service positions, including the mayors, governors, congress, and members, senators, and the vice president.
Deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA, is the molecule that carries genetic information for the development and functioning of an organism. DNA is made of two linked strands that wind around each other to resemble a twisted ladder. A shape known as a double helix, each strand has backbone made of alternating sugar, deoxyribose, and phosphate groups. Attached to each attached to each sugar is one of four bases: adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. The two strands are connected by chemical bonds, with thymine and cytosine bonds with guanine. The sequence of bases along DNA's backbones encodes biological information such as the instruction for making a protein or RNA molecule. Areas of forensic science. Most forensic scientists work in laboratory settings, but you may also attend crime or other incident scenes to help reconstruct the crime, of help in the recognition, collection, and preservation of evidence within your specialty. For example, a forensic chemist may be asked to help in the processing of a clandestine drug laboratory. A trace evidence examiner may be asked to collect hairs and fibers and other trace from homicide scene. Usually, the crime scene component of a forensic scientist's job is a relatively minor part of the duties.
Forensic Science Timeline. Death of an Emperor Julius Caesar is assassinated. Following this event, a physician performed an autopsy and determined that of the 23 wounds found on the body, only one was fatal. Germanic and Slavic societies made law that medical experts must be the ones to determine the cause of death in crimes. Fingerprints first used to determine identity. Arabic merchants would take the debtor's fingerprint and attach it to the bill. Chinese use fingerprints to sign legal documents. Roman attorney Quintilian shows that the bloody handprint was intended to frame a blind man for his mother's murder. First forensic science manual published by the Chinese, this was the first known record of medical knowledge being used to solve criminal cases. Ambroise Paré, 1510 to 1590, writes extensively on the anatomy of homicidal wounds. First pathology reports published. Francois Demille publishes the first treatise on document examination in France. The University of Leipzig offers the first courses of forensic medicine. Marcello Mapilgi first recognized fingerprint patterns and uses the term loops and whorls. Rebel recognized that Dorsey had the made up for his friend Dr. Joseph Warren and thus identifies the doctor's body in a mass grave in Bunker Hill. First record the instant of physical matching of evidence leading to a murder conviction, John Toms, England. Evidence was a torn edge of a newspaper in a pistol that matched newspaper in his pocket. Franz Joseph Gall, 1715 to 1828, develops the field of penology. Phrenology. German chemist Valentin Ross developed a method detecting arsenic in a victim's stomach, thus advancing detecting arsenic in a victim's stomach. The investigation of poison deaths. Andrew Duncan Jr., 1773 to 1832, becomes the first professor of medical jurisprudence. The first use of document examination in a criminal investigation involves the analysis of ink dye on a document, known as Königin in Germany. Matthew Joseph Bonaventure or Pila, 1787 to 1853, publishes Trainee des Poisons, Treatise on Poison, the first toxicology textbook. Clothing and shoes of farm of laborer were examined and found to match evidence of nearby murder scene, where a young woman was found drowned in a shallow pool. Sibelius isolates arsenic from human stomach contents and urine, giving birth to the field of forensic toxicology. Johannes Porkinjet, 1787 to 1869, devises the first crude fingerprint classification system. Henry Goddard, 1866 to 1957, matches two bullets to show they came from the same bullet mold. James Marsh, an English chemist, uses chemical processes to determine arsenic as the cause of death in a murder trial. San Francisco uses photography for criminal identification, the first city in the US to do so. The first paper on her analysis is published in France, in Bengal, India. Sir William Herschel, 1833 to 1917, requires natives sign contracts with a hand imprint and shows that the fingerprints did not change over a 50-year period. Friedrich Mischer, 1844 to 1895, discovers DNA. Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen, 1845 to 1923, discovers X-rays. Cesar Lombroso, 1835 to 1909, publishes The Criminal Man, which states that criminals can be identified and classified by their physical characteristics. Henry Pauls and William James Herschel published a paper describing the uniqueness of fingerprints. Francis Galton, a scientist, adapted their findings for the court. Galton's system identified the following patterns: plain arch, tented arch, simple loop, central pocket loop, double loop, pocket loop, plain whorl, and accidental. Henry Pauls, 1843 to 1930, shows that the powder dusting will expose latent fingerprints. Alphonse Bertolini, 1853 to 1914, developed his anthropometric identification system. Coroner's Act established that coroners were to determine the cause of sudden, violent, and unnatural deaths. Arthur Conan Doyle also publishes the first Sherlock Holmes story. Anthropometry, a system using various measurements of physical features and bones used throughout the US and Europe. Using the system, a criminal information could be reduced to a set of numbers. Alexander Lacassagne, 1843 to 1924, shows that the marks on bullets could be matched to those within a rifle gun barrel. Juan Bucetich, an Argentinian police officer, is the first to use fingerprints as evidence in a murder investigation. He created a system of fingerprint identification which he termed dactyloscopy. Sir Francis Galton, 1822 to 1911, publishes his classic textbook, Fingerprints. Hans Gross, 1847 to 1915, publishes Criminal Investigations and coined the term criminalistics. Dr. Edward Piotrowski publishes his text on bloodstain pattern recognition. Herman Welker (1822 to 1889) shows his own fingerprints taken in 1897 match those taken in 1856, thus supporting the findings of Wilhelm Herschel. Paul Joshua Rich (1854 to 1927) uses a microscope for ballistic comparison. Hans Gross publishes Criminal Psychology. Sir Edward Richard Henry (1850 to 1931) devises a fingerprint classification system that is the basis for those used in Britain and America today. Human blood grouping ABO, discovered by Karl Landsteiner and adapted for use of bloodstains by Dieter Max Richter. For Unlehenhut (1870 to 1957) devises a method to distinguish between human and animal blood. Sir Edward Richard Henry becomes head of Scotland Yard and adopts a fingerprint identification system in place of anthropometry. Galton Henry system of fingerprint identification, officially used by Scotland Yard, and it's the most widely used fingerprinting method to date. Harry Jackson becomes the first person in England to be convicted by fingerprint evidence. The first systematic use of fingerprints for criminal identification in the United States begins to the New York State prison system. Oscar and Rudolph Adler developed the Benzedine test of blood. First school of forensic science founded in Rodolphe Archelon Ries in Switzerland. Victor Balthasar and Marcel Lambert published first study on hair, including the microscopic studies from the most animals. First legal case ever involving hair also took place following this study. Albert Osborne (1858 to 1946) lays down the principles of document examination in his book Question Documents. Thomas Jennings becomes the first U.S. citizen convicted of a crime by use of fingerprints. Victor Balthasar realizes that tools used to make gun barrels never leave the same markings. An individual gun barrels leave identifying grooves on each bullet fired through it. He developed several methods of matching bullets to gun via photography. Victor Balthasar (1872 to 1950) publishes his belief that each fired bullet carries unique marks. Physicist John Fisher invents the helixometer. The Sacco and Vanzetti case brings ballistics to the public's attention. The case highlights the value of the newly developed comparison microscope. First police crime lab established in Los Angeles. Fry v. United States sets standards for the admission of scientific evidence into U.S. governments. Philip Gravel and Calvin Godward (1891 to 1955) developed a comparison microscope. Prototype polygraph, which was invented by John Larson in 1921, developed for use in police stations. John Glaister (1856 to 1932) published his landmark book on hair analysis. FBI establishes its own crime laboratory. Now one of the legal medicine in Harvard was established. Indiana State Police Captain R.F. Borkenstein develops the breathalyzer, a sound spectrograph discovered to be able to record voices. Voice prints began to be used in investigation and as court evidence from recordings of phones answering machines or tape recorders. FBI established the National Crime Information Center, first national crime system, a computerized national filing system on wanted people, stolen vehicles, weapons, etc. Technology developed the Aerospace Corporation in the U.S. to detect gunshots residue, which can link a suspect to a crime scene and can show how close that suspect was to the gun. Detection of gunshot residue by SEM EDS is developed. First fingerprint reader installed at the FBI. FBI introduced the Automated Fingerprint Identification System or AFIS. Royal Canadian Mounted Police implement first automatic fingerprint identification system. DNA fingerprinting techniques developed by Sir Alec Jeffreys in England. Colin Pitchfork becomes the first criminal identified by the use of DNA. First United States use of DNA for a conviction in the Florida case of Tommy Lee Andrews. Dobert B. Merrill, Dow Pharmaceuticals establishes new rules for the admission of scientific evidence into the courtroom and alerts the prior rules set in 1923. National Academy of Science announces DNA evidence is reliable. FBI establishes the Integrated Automated Fingerprint Identification System, cutting down fingerprint inquiry response from 2 weeks to 2 hours. Technology speed up the DNA profiling time from 6 to 8 weeks to between 1 to 2 days. Britain's Forensic Science Service develops online footwear coding and detection system. This helps police the identity footwear marks quickly. A way for scientists to visualize fingerprints even after the print has been removed is developed, relating to how fingerprints can corrode metal surfaces. Michigan State University developed software that automatically match hand-drawn facial sketch to mugshots stored in database. Japanese researchers developed a dental X-ray matching system. This system can automatically match dental X-rays in a database and makes a positive match in less than 4 seconds.